Oh, okay, it's the same.
Live. Now I'm getting the presentation going again. We have three visitors right now. Presentation, next gen education. Here we are. So Dennis, you see your presentation?
Oh, that's so great, Philippe. Thank you.
I don't know if you can move it or I can move it for
That's
you.
it.
So you just tell me.
Let me see if you have to move it. You have to move it.
Okay, no problem. We'll do that. So we are 16 to the hour, 60 minutes to the hour so far. We wait for another minute or so. I see we have 6 eyeballs.
That's great.
So the three of us and another 6.
Uh-huh.
Good morning, or good afternoon, or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And thank you, Jonathan. You see the slides. That's good. So I'll do in the discussion. Good morning. You all hear us.
What's that mean?
So I think we start. So good, whatever it is, good evening to California, good day to Asia, and good very early morning to Tel Aviv, where I'm sitting. So for the audience, first of all, before we start, each of us introducing ourselves, I quickly wanted to say that it's not a first for Dennis, Christian, and myself to meet. We are friends. Also, we span all around the globe. We are friends in a think tank, and we meet if there's no COVID. We meet every few months in person. Dennis and Christian are very active in Asia. I'm at the other end of Asia. I'm in Israel, which is officially also part of Asia. And I'm more active in Switzerland and Israel. So let's start. I think that perhaps we do it by alphabet. So Christian, you're first, and then Dennis, and then I end.
Thank you so much, Philippe, and thank you for Jason and the organisers and the people listening to us this morning. This is just such a fun experience to be here together with Philippe and Dennis, and we don't do it often enough. Just by way of brief background to me, like relevant to our talk today, I'm a lawyer originally from Australia, but that was I came to Hong Kong in 1994. I've had sort of quite a professional journey that brings me to where I am today. Currently, I'm an independent family advisor to 6 families. Each one of those families and my role for them is very different. Focusing on, but the one commonality amongst my client families is they all think of wealth as being the 5 capitals. So I'll say a bit more about that later. And all of my families, they want a better quality of family relationships. They want family flourishing. So the goal for my family clients is family flourishing. And for one of the families, I'm officially appointed as their chief learning officer. I can come back and talk a little bit more about that. For another family, I'm a member of their beneficiary relations committee. And I'll talk about what that is. And I've also been responsible, I'm kind of like a mentor for the family, and I've been responsible for overseeing an assessment process. So that's me relevant to today.
Okay, Dennis.
Well, I'm Dennis Jaffe, and I'm in San Francisco. But when there's no great threat from COVID, I work all over the place, and I'm used to working globally. And Philippe and Christian and I have a number of a lot of interaction and dialogue across the world because we share some incredible ideas and themes that we're going to be sharing. So I've been an advisor, a professor, a researcher for more than 40 years, And most recently, you could see a copy of my book, which is on uh, uh, interviews with 100-year families. And I've also recently written a book about kind of cross cultures around the world and how different family businesses um, uh, occupy different cultural styles, and another book that just came out on matriarchs and women business leaders. So I'm a sociologist, and I work by interviewing and telling stories, not doing surveys and charts and graphs. And what I'm going to share is some of the things I've learned about next generation education and psychology.
Great. Thank you, Dennis, and you, Christian. So, hi, my name is Philippe. Similar to Christian, I'm a reformed. What I started, I reformed my activity. I'm not anymore a banker. I started in Switzerland as a private banker. I came to Israel in 1996 and started as a private banker here, but then very quickly pivoted over to be consultant to families of wealth, where I'm, as Christian, concerned about the 5 capitals, not only the financial capital, but really look into how the family copes with all the things around the financial capital. I'm in French, we call it personne de confiance. I am a trusted advisor to many, many families on many things. The big difference, I think, in my world compared to Dennis's world especially, is that here it's rather new money. We are in the first or second or maximum third generation of family wealth, whereas in the US, obviously, you have families which are already 100-year families, as your book says, Dennis. And I think the Christian in your world, it's similar that the Asian money, there is some old money, I guess, in Singapore and Hong Kong, but mainly it's also newer economy. And this makes it a little different, and we learn from Dennis's world and bring it into our world, which is actually great. So we had prepared a little bit that we will discuss this topic of understanding the psychology of money. And as we have the sociologist with us, we asked Dennis to start with a little presentation. With a little presentation of what he has found in his long career, of how what happens actually, and what's the psychology of money. So, Dennis, why don't you get going?
Okay, well, next, click on to the next slide, and I'll start talking. So, gone. Oh, there it is. Okay. So first of all, people in families are pretty universal about the idea that they want to educate and develop their next generation. And I think the view that we have, the reason we're talking about psychology, not education, is because educating the next generation is not a matter of giving them information or kind of traditional teaching. Teaching of financial skills is what some families think that education is. That it's really about development, about personal development, a deeper form of education, because family members have to not just have information, but they have to work together, and they have to be engaged on a deep level, and they have to kind of have a good sense of themselves. So development is what families do, and as part of that is learning and education, but it's a deeper process. So the skills that family members need are not learned in school. They're emotional and personal development, and the task for a family member is to become a mature and full person, not just to fill their mind with ideas. And in order to do that, it involves high engagement with the family. And since the family wants to stay connected, a lot of the educational programs have to be done, are best done by the family together, rather than having everybody go off and take a course somewhere. Coming together as a family has all kinds of benefits in terms of connection and in terms of being able to build a shared commitment. And it's as Christian will say, it's more than about financial knowledge. It's about other deeper senses. And family members have to learn skills, not just financial skills, but independent, how to be responsible and thoughtful about personal wealth that they're inheriting. But they also have to learn to work together. And I think people, we read all these stories about families suing each other and fighting. The family has to learn the skills of collaboration that are connected to maturity. And it includes for family members, because they have these great resources and demands on them, they have to create a personal development plan. And also, another part of it is it's not just learning for learning's sake. They're preparing for an actual role. And I think when the family helps them see this is what you're preparing for, that's really important. So let me just run through a couple of points about this learning process that I came to from my study in interviews with 100 families all over the world. So next slide. Take 15 minutes. Here we go. So one thing is that there are wealth acquirers who are the people in the first generation who are kind of coming into wealth, and they're usually people that weren't wealthy and that are this is the first time being wealthy, and they have to learn what that's about and how to do that. Their children, however, have grown up with wealth, and there are certain themes that we hear from wealthy children of wealthy parents that they have sometimes a lack of intimacy and contact with parents. We'll talk more later. Parents use money to control them and to make them do things. It's a carrot and a stick, and this affects their personal development. Wealthy families are embarrassed sometimes about their wealth, and instead of going out and showing it and displaying it in front of the world, they get isolated and they distrust other people. They have to challenge, kind of their entitlement and sense of, and ask themselves, what do we want to do, and what are we doing with our wealth? What is our wealth for? They have a sense of, they feel very dependent and anxious because they didn't create the wealth. And sometimes when you have wealth and you have the option in your life of not having to work, it's very hard to find a life purpose and to find something to stick with. And so a lot of people who are wealthy, they jump from thing to thing. And I would say the wealthy heirs are by and large have anxiety about living up to expectations, about using the wealth, about not losing it. And so these are the challenges that they have, and the education and development has to deal with them. Next slide. So we families talk about how do you develop, and let's go through a process, because it has a part of the experience is the children grow up with their parents dominating them. They have a deep sense of who they are. They really feel very, very dependent. And so in order to develop, the first thing is they need to go on a journey. And a lot of people talk about the hero's journey. They have to go out. And so they can't just stay in the family where they're, or in the family's realm where they're known as well. They have to go out and discover who they are through education, through working outside. And I would say this takes a number of years. It's not like going out to college, or they have to find out who they are and develop an independent identity. And only then are they ready to come back and get engaged with the family. They may be engaged lightly while they're outside, but there's a period outside, and this is something that family development and development in general, you need to become independent before you can become interdependent. So you can look at the cycle: parent, script, dependent, finding your passion, individuate, enterprise needs, rejoining the family, interdependent. Next. So just want to say briefly that the challenge is that the parents in the first generation are wealth acquirers, and they did not grow up wealthy, and they tend to project their experience. You should make it on your own. You should that your own kind of creation of wealth, and they don't really understand the anxiety and the concerns of the second generation. So the first generation parents are trying to raise children who have completely different life experience, and this is a part of the challenge that first generation people see, is they don't really understand how hard it is and the things that their children have to learn. Next.
Here you go.
So the first thing that families have to do is understand that money is not some abstract entity. In a wealthy family, money has a lot of emotional meaning. It's as I said earlier, it's used to control people. It's used to show how important or good a person you are. And the family has to have conversations not about who's going to get the wealth. That's the way families see the conversation, but about what is the wealth about? What does it mean? Some families we ask the question, whose money is it? The kids wonder, is it theirs? Then they think, well, it's going to be ours. Whose money is it? What does it mean? What are the concerns we have? What are the expectations? What does it mean to be fair? Some people think fair and equal are the same. So the family has to begin by having discussions, not as one family says, not to vote on what's going to happen to the wealth, but to just talk about what it means and what people want to do with their lives and what is the wealth for. So this is an important part of family development, and it's not about learning or getting information. It's about discovery of what is our wealth and our good fortune mean. Next. There are a number of things that families do, and we're going to talk about them in a little bit more depth. The first is that families need to be mentored, and they need to develop a career. And a career for wealthy families does not mean necessarily earning a living. Sometimes it's about social impact. Sometimes it's about doing work in the world. Sometimes it's about becoming an artist. And the family has to come to terms with how they value it and help people prepare and stick with it and do something that's worthwhile. So families need mentoring and career development as part of their, quote, education. And the families often have shared workshops where they work on that, and also help people by providing individual coaches. Next. Another thing that families do is, in order to be involved with the wealth, it's not a question of just giving them financial information. Families help the family members actually live and experience what it is that they do to create or sustain wealth. So if they're a foundation, for example, they might do things to learn about the groups that they're being given money to. They might spend time doing internships. So families redefine the annual business meeting and ways of getting involved, and they provide all kinds of opportunities for people not just to see it, but to actually learn it and do it. And this is an important part of families, not to introduce them to the business as a positive and a creative force, not as not to come home every night and talk about the damn business and how bad it is and how frustrating it is, but really to get them excited and to feel comfortable with it. Next. So families are involved in governance, and family members should get not just opportunities to work in the business, but very often the family members don't have an operating business, or they don't want family members to work in the business, so they have to get involved in governance, and they have to learn about the board. And family members very often have board observers, or they have board, what they call junior board members, where they have a learning group of family members that meets with different people and learns about the business. Another way that family gets engaged is by being involved in an innovation group, or what we call a family bank, different things. So again, the learning experience of family members is what we call action learning, active learning, not learning and not classroom learning, but really being involved. So I think let's just move on from here and hear from Philippe and Christian, because the point I'm making is that family members educate each other through the process of personal development and
Dennis,
learning,
your sound is.
and it's very, very different than just offering them a course or sending them off to a financial literacy program about personal development.
Dennis, your internet is bad. I don't know what happened. You're cutting off at the last here. The last minute was a bit shaky. So see if you can do something about that. So thank you very much, Dennis, for this introduction. I just want to point out that in the handout section, I put an article I wrote about how to educate affluent children, which kind of builds on the same ideas that Dennis just presented, that it's not so easy and it's important to do it the right way. Myself, Christian, so okay, I start now.
Maybe can I just give some commentary back to
Yes, please.
Dennis? Would that be?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Oh, who looks like he's frozen. Sorry, it's like.
I hope. Oh, he's back.
Yeah. So Dennis, I mean, I was just very grateful to hear you talk, reflecting on my roles, etc. I love the fact. So if I could just recap a couple of points that you made and reflect on them. I love the fact that you talked about, one of the things is needing to develop collaborative skills, and you link that to maturity. I think that's you talk about sort of a mature way of collaboration. I think making that connection to maturity and adult development, that's a good point. You talk about the need for the hero's journey and going from being dependent to independent to interdependent. I struggle, just to know, I firmly, personally believe that, but with the families that I work for, with one of them at least, it's a struggle. And at this one time we're trying to build this family cohesion, and I see them wanting to provide roles and a lot of support for the rising generation. I see there's more of a inertia around sort of hanging around together rather than going out. So that's my own issue. Mm-hmm. So there's a tension, I think, in the sort of people will say, well, shouldn't we be teaching them about the financial education, or shouldn't we be teaching them about the governance, or about the philanthropy, which has a tendency to keep holding people close rather than let them go on their own journey. There's one other thing that was. Philippe, what do you think?
Yeah, there is this story, the famous story of the butterfly. I used it actually in my presentation yesterday, and I think it's also in my book. That when a little child, you walk with a child in the nature, and you see a cocoon of a butterfly which just is cracking up, and the kid takes the cocoon and breaks it open because he wants the butterfly to fly, and he notices that the butterfly cannot fly. And actually what we all know is that the butterfly needs that fight with the cocoon to get out of the cocoon. He needs to train his wings to be able to fly. He cannot just open the cocoon and fly away. He needs that exercise. And I think that's the most important job of a parenting, and it doesn't matter if it's Wells or not Wells. The most important job of parenting is to let your children struggle, not to homelessness, but to struggle in finding their own way and building their own muscles, because only if they have their own muscles, they actually know how to fly. So I think that's an important thing. And I cannot stress the importance of understanding that the wealth creator, the first generation, as our dear friend Jim Grubman calls it, is a stranger to paradise. He grew up somewhere else in a different environment and world and came into wealth, but he still remembers that he was a poor guy who had to walk 5 kilometers to get to school and had to carry heavy boxes from the wholesale market to the retail shop. And he doesn't understand his children or his grandchildren who are being chauffeured to school. And even so, he wants them to go to the best schools and wants them to have the best education. He doesn't speak the same language. He doesn't speak the same worldview, because he remembers only how, and he also has a nostalgia to it, because he thinks that it was wonderful when he was young and he had to walk 5 kilometers to school. And he thinks that his children and his grandchildren are spoiled, entitled children, instead of being that values that he or she had when she started. So it makes it already very complicated. And if I may, we lost Dennis, but I hope he comes back. I might add an anecdote of my own family, as I'm not only a consultant to families, I'm also a member of one. We all are members of families, but we had the wealth issues as well. When my parents got lucky and had some money, they built a swimming pool in the garden. And my oldest sister, who is 10 years older than me, she was ashamed of it that we have a swimming pool in the garden. And she didn't invite any friends from school and didn't invite any friends from the youth movement, because she was ashamed of it that we are wealthy and have a swimming pool in the garden. Whereas my brother, who is also 7 years older than me, so 2 years younger than my sister, he right away threw parties in the swimming pool. His whole class from school was there, and all his friends from the youth movement came. Every week there was a party in the pool. And today, 40 years later, my sister says, actually, my brother was more healthy with the wealth than she was, because he said, if already we have the pool, let's share it. Let's not keep it in my ivory tower and behind gated walls and hide that we have a pool. Be sharing and be proud that your parents didn't steal the money. My father worked hard and we had a family business. So share it with others. So I think this is the example which happened in my family, and it happens in many families. It's you're filthy rich. Yes, it's filthy and it's a taboo, and we learn to talk about sex, but some of us, to our children, but talking about money and talking about what money did to me in my childhood and how I had to grow up with being the son of and being looked at in dollar signs in school, and here's the kid of the rich people. If I talk about this to my children, instead of just telling them I had to do this and I worked hard and I achieved this, but I tell them that it was a struggle and it was difficult to identify my own me, as Dennis showed up before. If you show that vulnerability, then you have your children with you when they are vulnerable, and they will tell you how to be healthy with food, with wealth. Like I just see that Faisal is writing us comments. He's about financial health. I read in LinkedIn. Just researching a little bit, but exactly financial health, how you're healthy with your money. And it doesn't matter if you're poor and have no money, you have to be healthy and clear how you deal with it. And if you're very, very rich and you have to deal with your money, it's about how you have your relationship. Are you liberated from money by wealth, or are you the prisoner of your wealth?
That's a nice word.
Yeah. I mean, these are all problems that people have a hard time seeing that wealthy people have problems, because they think, well, wealth should solve everything. And so these kinds of dilemmas that they have are hard for them to talk about. And they get very, kind of closed off, because you're not supposed to have these problems.
But as this famous saying says, you can buy medicine with money, but you can't buy health. You can buy food, but you can't buy appetite. You can even buy sex, but you can't buy love. So everything you actually want, and the emotional side, and everything you actually need, that hug and that love, you can't buy. So yes, money is wonderful, and it's always better to have than not to have, and it's always better to be on the giving side instead of the receiving side, etc., etc. But money only brings you to a certain level. And that extra which you actually need, and that's for every person, doesn't matter how much you have, Maslow's pyramid and all the other theories we know, all the real stuff we want is not money. And because, as you said, Dennis, because this money is all over the place, and even if you're 4 years old or 10 years old or 15 years old, money is disturbing the family dynamics. The affection between parents and children is different, because there's always this money stopping you from being a normal family.
So it's like the money is a. I mean, just repeating what you said. The money is like another person in the family, or it's another object in that family system.
Absolutely.
With its own emotional pull. Yeah. Philippe.
On the older generation doesn't want to share it, because they think that if they share it and give it away, then the kids will stop coming around. This is what one person recently told me. I'm not going to make any decisions because I like them coming every week and visiting me and having dinner, and if I gave it away, that might stop.
My father had a friend who did even worse. He said the child who is nice to me gets more, and then so one child was nice to him, and he gave him some more money. Then the other one started being nice to his dad because he also wanted some money, and so he played them one to the other. So he said at least every week someone is visiting. So you're playing them off.
Yeah,
it's the power you have. I mean, we all struggle with our children. They don't do what we have dreamt for them to do, and I can try to convince my son to go to university. I can try to convince him to be whatever. But if you have money, you can always say, if you don't do it, I will take your car away. If you don't do it, I won't pay you the next whatever, ski holiday, etc. So you have much more power, unfortunately, or you have more tools to bend them and to put them into your according to your dream, and you don't let the freedom. And I see that all the time, as you said before, Denise, those families come to us and have serious issues, and they're afraid to say that they have serious issues because they're not allowed to have serious issues because they're rich.
Right. Yeah. Now, Christian, I wanted to kind of make sure that you had some time to talk about the very, very interesting work that you do. And you said, like chief learning officer and the programs that you work with some of the your family clients. I just think that's fascinating stuff.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks very much, Dennis. And then we can sort of chat more generally at the end. One of the things about the chief learning officer, so this is a family office conference, so the idea is if a family is serious about like the 5 capitals model, if a family is serious about family flourishing, then it's this new idea to look at having a chief learning officer. But a chief learning officer it's a very confusing term, and maybe a better term that I've settled on, which is closer to the reality, is it's more of a family learning and development advisor often. So again, that's very in line with your presentation, Dennis. Maybe I'll sort of a little bit about my own journey. So I used to be a tax and trust guy. I came to Hong Kong in the days of estate duty. I ended up joining a private bank, which was a real eye-opener and a great experience for me. And when I joined this private bank, we were giving away to clients Jay's little book on family wealth, keeping it in the family. And I was excited in those days of reading about interesting things like family banks and incentive trusts and things. And back in those days, as a wealth advisor for this bank, I would go to their wealthy clients, and I was very well intentioned, and I would do things. I would sort of be in these meetings with individuals, parents of a wealthy family, and I would say, tell me what your values are. Like, we're setting up this trust. was kind of inspired by people like Jay Hughes. So I'd say, well, let's say this is trust as a gift of love, and let's make it clear what your values are. And so they'd say, well, we value hard work and, keeping a low profile and all of these good things. And so I would write it into their trust documents or their wishes and say, well, as a family, we value hard work and keeping a low profile and et cetera, et cetera. As a young wealth advisor, I was never having these conversations with couples. I was never having these values conversations with families. And many, many years later, what I realized is that I was, helping people write out what they would call espoused values, which might have been their values. And in hindsight, I realized I didn't have the skill set. I didn't know the first thing about doing values work with families. But whereas sort of getting wealthy individuals, wealthy couples, sort of real grounded around real values around money is an important piece of the work. And therefore you come to the conclusion that just sort of specifically around this values piece is to go into the realm of values, you should have some kind of professional qualification in the area. You need to have some qualitative skills. And back then I didn't know it. And today I'm kind of a jack of all trades. The kind of people who have these sort of proper skills around values and proper skills around purpose, they're the people from the coaching or the counseling or the developmental backgrounds. And so if you're a family office, the values conversation is very, very important. But people who typically get hired into a family office, people like Philippe are exceptional. People who get hired to run a family office are probably extremely good with investments or, accounting background, but probably haven't had professional exposure to the world of values or the world of purpose. And this is an important part of it. So I think for a family office audience, I think I would encourage people to think about, you need to get training around how to work with values. You need to get training around how to have a helping relationship, with the family that you're working for. Sometimes the way that you help people is to say, no, go and do it yourself. That's an important part. So that's one sort of soundbite, I guess, about a learning over the years. Yeah.
It's even more complicated because a founder, it's a one-man show. It's a monarchy.
Yeah.
So the family office starts with his PA. His personal assistant is running also the vacation home. He's looking about nutrition of the kids, and he's doing all that stuff which has nothing to do with the business. So the PA, the personal assistant, becomes the family office. Then a bit later in development,
that's not a helping relationship. Yeah.
Exactly. And then the next development, then there makes more money, and then the CPA or the CFO of the business also has to deal with the private wealth of the family. And he's an accountant, with all due respect, and I have a lot of respect for accountants, but it's about money. And as you said, you need a different skill set. Or like one of our colleagues once said, it's like to get rich is completely different than to stay rich. So if you're the get rich phase, all the resources of the family, all the money and all the personal involvement of everyone in the family is towards the goal of making money and succeeding. But once you are there, once you arrived in paradise, you need to gate your paradise and watch after your children, or how Getty said, put all the eggs in one basket, but look after the basket. So we have to look after. There's different skills you need to maintain and to flourish inside something. Well, let's do the analogy of startups. Okay, when you're the first startup, you just start in high tech and you want to succeed, you're fully motivated. Once you made your first exit and you IPO'd at a very nice few $1 million, then you go into your next startup. There's less stamina, there's less push, and you might fail actually in your second one because you were so good in the first one that you have lost because the money spoiled you in certain. We saw a few of very successful startup entrepreneurs who had then failures the second time. So Money is complicated.
Can I share a few more?
Go ahead.
Now I'll give like a more positive example. Again, so the first example was me with sort of Asian families, and they were sort of failed examples of what not to do, and examples that people who are like lawyers, they need to find people like coaches and counselors to pair up with if they're working in this space. If you're a family office, you should be engaging with coaches and counselors to help with your family. On a more positive note, there's a wonderful book by Hartley Goldstone, Jay Hughes, Keith Whitaker called Family Trusts. And it looks at the trustee-beneficiary relationship from part of it is looking at it from a positive psychology perspective. So if you can get, often families in Asia have wealth owned through family trusts, have money owned through family trusts. So doing things like gratitude exercises, doing things like looking at your positive and negative values around those family trusts. Those are very powerful ways to help inoculate the family. One of my clients, the patriarch, writes a letter to every one of their grandchildren. Most of the grandchildren are working away. But every grandchild gets a letter once they've graduated. And the letter says, look, as a family, we want to help you to become independent, to know yourself. We have an assessment process. We have a coach. You can have access to the coach. You can do the same assessment process to help you to get to know yourself. Or if you want your own coach, your own things, we'll pay for it. Just go and find it and do it. But please come back and share with me, the grandfather, grandparents, what your stories are, what you're learning about yourself. So those are some quick positive examples.
But the problem of the patriarch, of the matriarch, of the founder is that they are a little bit control freaks. So I have a family where they wanted finally to get the children to learn about the family business and about finance. And they asked their CPA to give a seminar to the family about what's a balance sheet and what's all the financial information. But the patriarch was sitting in the classroom. So you had like 10 next gens, rising generation, and the guy was in the back room of the room and checking who is paying attention and who is listening and who is asking smart questions and who is asking, God forbid, dumb questions. So, how one of the sons told me, my father is breathing on my neck all the time. I always feel my father in behind breathing down my neck. And that's exactly the issue. If you can't get them to spread the wings, you won't get independent people. And sorry for the thing, but I always talk about Prince Charles. He's 73 years old and his mother is now ill. But she will go through that as well. So Prince Charles is 73 years old and still waits that he gets the job. And he can't go to the competition because he can't be king of Denmark suddenly. So he's prisoner. But if you are in a family business and you know that there's no room for another CEO because this family head of the family is running the show for another 20, 30 years, you better go and spread your wings somewhere else and then come back with an experienced person instead of sitting in the shade and waiting until your time has come.
Yeah. I think we've lost Dennis again. When Dennis comes back, I'd like to ask him to comment on, because as a chief learning officer, as somebody responsible for these things, like two things that are challenging, and your example about the patriarch sitting in the back of the room is, I'll be honest, like motivation across a group of people. You have a distribution curve around motivation. So I'd love to hear Dennis's thoughts on motivation.
Yep.
And like as an advisor or a chief learning officer, etc., it's easy for us to say, let's put on group learning activities. But there's definitely, and there's a place for that, but then there's definitely you need, and I struggle with this, the need for the sort of the personalized, the individual learning journey, the go away and do your own learning. Yeah. So,
I'm
but
just
I
in the
might
middle of
also, yeah.
I'm just in the middle of giving a seminar to a rising generation of a big family. So we have 19 next gens. They are between, the oldest is 31 and the youngest will be 14, but we didn't invite him to the class. So we have two kids, small ones which are not there, so they're 18. They're 18 from the age of 18 to 30. So they are happy campers, thank God, but it was not easy. I mean, we invite them to our seminar. They meet every 3 weeks for half a day, if even longer, and no one asked them if they want or don't want to be there. They were told to go to this seminar, and it's important to know if your audience are prisoners or if your audience comes here out of free will. And as you said, Christian, not everyone has the same skill set. One is studying economics, and the other one is a physiotherapist. So the physiotherapist is new to balance sheet and to talking about money, where the one who's studying economy, at least macro-wise, he understands the concept. So we're introducing this family to do, and it's nice to see that it works. It doesn't always, but this family works very well. They help each other. There's a WhatsApp group which they are constantly sending articles. What we learned 2 weeks ago. Look, what's in the newspaper. That's exactly what we talked about in class. So there's a dynamic, but thank God to the DNA of the family, because they're all people with a lot of values. But you can have, I have another clients where it doesn't work because the children are unfortunately very entitled and believe that everyone has to be serving them and giving them everything on a platter. They sit around the pool and wait that they're being served.
Yeah.
Which is
yeah. So our topic today is focusing on like the psychology around money. But if I step out, I sort of look at the bigger picture. The kinds of so for all my clients, they want family flourishing, and they believe in the wealth of the family as its five capital. Capital is its human, intellectual, social, spiritual, supported by financial capital. So that's helpful. But the number one challenge across my small client base is keeping connected. Like meaningful connections. Positive, like improving the family dynamics. That's one part of it. That's probably the bigger issue. And entitlement, which I think stems from like not having gone on that hero's journey. And the entitlement sort of, for me, it sort of turns up in, to have good joint decision making in families, you need to have good boundaries and role clarity, et cetera, et cetera. And if you have entitled family members, then they just ignore all of those things. They just ignore all of the boundaries and the decision making rules, et cetera, et cetera. And so one of my clients, I'm always learning from my clients. One of my clients said, behind entitlement, there's a scarcity.
Yeah, they're filling the void with entitlement instead of filling it with values.
Yeah.
I think that if Dennis ever comes back, what was interesting to see is that with his 100-year project is that he finds the families who are flourishing for 100 years. And I think that's because, from the outside looking at it, is because they put the rules down very early. It's not just, you're not just born into that family and have everything because you're born into. You have to actually earn your place in the family. You have to invest time and invest respect. And I think that what's important, more important than how much money you donate, you inherit from your parents, or how much money there is in the pot, it's about the stories. It's about the storytelling. It's about the legacy, and it's about building up that glue that puts the family together. As the pictures on Dennis's presentation. I mean, if you take the kids to the factory ground and show them what we actually do, and then also show them that the name of the person who operates the machine, and tell him, "Oh, Mr. Smith, a long time I haven't seen you. How are you? How are the kids? How's your wife?" You show that you are the patron, you are the actually business owner, which respects the janitor and respects the guy who operates the machine, and you're not just sitting in the management level floor and in a big office and have everyone run for you. It's the DNA of your family business. It's the DNA of yourself and of your behavior. It's the modeling that teaches your children. You can take the best professor of the best universities and teach your children the theory of finance and accounting and psychology and everything you want. But if you don't live it, if you don't walk the talk and you don't do that, it's unfortunately not always working. It only works if you also have a good example. And I think this is very important for everyone to understand that even if you work in the family office industry or in financial wealth management, the family needs that learning person that Christian represents, or that consulting who talks about the qualitative issues. The quantitative issues, sorry to say, have been there for many years. You can manage money as good as the banker next door to you. We all invest in similar things. We all try the best things. So you have an edge perhaps, but its IRR can be calculated, okay? But the survival of the wealth inside the family has nothing to do with IRR or with EBITDA or things like that. It has to do with the fabric of the family. The fabric of the family is not the money, it's not the business, it's the stories, and it's the way you invest time with your family to flourish. And it's all those things you write, Christian. I mean, we are getting to the end of presentation, so let's not forget. I mean, Dennis has a lot of books out there and a lot of interesting articles. So just look after him, search him, Dennis Jaffe. I have a book out there. Christian has a wonderful webpage with a lot of material which you can read through or reach out to Christian Stewart. We are thinking a lot about those things and writing a lot about those things because it's not trivial. It's not only science. It's a lot of trial and error, and every family is different. Tolstoy already said every happy family looks the same way and every unhappy family is a different story. So this is exactly how it is. When I see a new family coming to my office, it's always beginner's mind. I start from scratch. Who are you? Where are you coming from? Because your money script, the way you behave, it's not only who you are, it's what you were taught by your parents, it's what your family went through. I mean, I'm Jewish. In my world, Holocaust survivors are different people than people who didn't go through the Holocaust.
Okay, let me jump in. Like when do we finish? Do we have?
We have another 7 minutes.
7 minutes. Okay, right. This is the model that I work with, and it's the starting point of this model is J, and picking up on your family as the Holocaust survivor, but bringing it back to the money theme as well. So like step number one, what's the mission or the vision or goal of the purpose and goal of the family? And so for my families, they tend to say, well, we want family flourishing. To have family flourishing, you need individual flourishing. They say, what's the wealth of the family? It's the human, intellectual, social, spiritual capital. Like if you're a family office, you've got to understand that you don't know anything about human, intellectual, social, spiritual capital. Therefore, you need people like coaches and counselors, people with qualitative skills to come in and work with the family. The easiest thing you can do is find appropriately qualified coaches, but they have had to work through their own money issues. Right? How do you grow human capital? It's, as Dennis said, it's all about personal development. It's all about adult development. But a formula for growing human capital is help people to know, there's two sides. Help people to know themselves, right? And you can do that through an assessment and coaching, and Dennis's go away and find yourself, etc. The other side of the coin is help people identify and remove their obstacles and their roadblocks, right? And those obstacles and roadblocks could be many, many different things, and often they're things that you're unconscious of. I will spend the rest of my life removing my obstacles and roadblocks. I've got that many. And the money scripts, like your sister, originally she felt the shame, right? So the shame story is something that's one of her obstacles. And this kind of thing, like the shame around money or the trauma of a family from sort of past events, it gets trapped in the body. Yeah. So it's about stories and it's about embodied experiences, a lot of the stuff which we're not conscious of. So I think those money stories and scripts can be a subset of those obstacles that we've got to get help to identify and to remove. And I'll just one last piece, because this is kind of my favorite thing. It's like, so I was talking about values before, like values are useless if it's in the head and it's on paper. Like for values to have effect, it's got to be embodied. It's got to be something that you feel in your body, grounded, etc. When we think about so one side of the coin is to know yourself. The other side of the coin is removing obstacles. The quickest way to remove the obstacles, and it might be shame about the money, and it might be, trauma from the past generations, is find people who can work at that body level, who can like remove stuff at the body level. Yeah.
I think that apropos the values, you can't take a white piece of paper and just write down our values are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's a process. The whole thing of writing a governance, of preparing a constitution for the family, the process is at most times much more important than the final product. It's not about what's written on the paper at the end. This is important, but the process of creating that paper with the family, the conversations you have. I mean, in one family I'm working with now, we are sitting already about 2.5 years on writing the constitution and the governance of the family, because the writing brings up stuff. Then we have to discuss them. We go sidekick and we start working on an issue. Once we work that issue out, we go back to the governance and write it down as a governance paragraph in that family governance. And I think it's a process. It's a process the family goes through. It's a process that each individual in the family goes through, and it changes. It changes. My sister by now is still ashamed of money, and still has a paradox of actually enjoying it, living it with the money, but on the other hand, having bad feelings about it. And it comes out in the oddest places, in family discussions about investing or whatever. I mean, so as you said, you have to own your own phobias and your own issues. You have to get to know yourself and you understand, I always react this way because I have this trauma inside me. Or wait, let me understand what I'm actually doing. Why do I do this way? Why I act this way? Let's understand it and try to overcome it, or to override this molded reaction, and try to break out of it if I don't like what is happening with me in that moment. So we have another minute only, so I think we should say.
Let me be controversial. Like, if you think of the classic story of, so a lot of the wealthy in Asia have been overseas Chinese. I guess I'm thinking of older ones. You hear this classic story of, we came with nothing but the shirt on his back and made the money and put in huge work ethic, etc., etc. Like, these are traumatized individuals who don't have secure attachment with their kids. Therefore, the kids are traumatized. So, like, that's the context of a lot of this family wealth. So it's, anyway, that's very negative.
No, that's also what Dennis said. So sorry that Dennis has left or has lost in the internet, in the World Wide Web. Thank you very much for everyone who listened and followed. I hope we were helpful, and you can find us on the internet. And there is a handout. I put an article I wrote 2-3 years ago about educating children. Christian, as I said, publishes a lot on his webpage and other places, and as well Dennis and me. So thank you very much, everyone, for listening in. And it's 15 minutes after, so we are finished this session, and wish you a good day and a good weekend.
Yeah, thank you very much, everybody, and thank you, Philippe, for organising and facilitating this, and to Dennis, we'll have to catch up with later.
Exactly. Thank you. Whoa, look how many talkbacks we get. Whoa, how many hearts.
Wow.
Okay, wow, it's beautiful. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.